Ichimon Japan is made possible by Patreon support. If you would like to make sure that we can keep bringing you more content like this, then head on over to japankyo.com/Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month. Wow. Man, these seals are really informed on
seals are the social
justice
warriors of nature.
Exactly. Yeah. All they ask for is a few fish now and they'll help you,
They will help your cause.
Welcome to Ichimon Japan. I'm Tony and
I'm Ryan.
And we are once again joined by someone whom you may remember from our Kansai dialect episode a few episodes ago. Her name is Saori, and welcome back to the show.
Hello, thank you.
All right, so we're glad to have you back for this very exciting episode.
Kansai dialect part 2.
No, it doesn't have. I don't think it has anything to do with the Kansai area. This whole story doesn't take place. Yeah, it's mainly Kanto and then I guess Chubu, which is more towards the middle of Honshu. But anyway, before we get into that, Ichimon means one question, and every episode we ask a question about Japan. Today's question is, did Tama-Chan the Seal save the world and cause immigration reform? So, yep, one of these hot button questions. I know everybody's wondering about this, but I think this will end up being one of our most peculiar episodes because it is just such a unique story that we're about to get into. But let's begin with this whole Tama-Chan the Seal. So our story starts in the summer of 2002. So in Tokyo, in the Tama River, one day, I guess somebody, or maybe a group of people, spot a seal. It's a bearded Arctic seal. And obviously seals are not normally in the Tokyo River system. That's a very rare thing. So they end up naming it Tama-chan, just as a nickname, because Tama River, Tama-chan. And it becomes a whole sensation. It's a big deal, like all on the news, and people go to, try to catch a glimpse of Tama-chan. And it's this cute story that kind of explodes in Japan. Saori, do you remember this happening?
I do remember, but I was, in Osaka, just watching this on TV, and I was like,
right.
Wow, there it is. In a city like river.
Yeah.
But I do remember it was a big thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't watching Japanese TV at the time, but from what I've read, it seems like it was on the news like almost every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was like merchandise, and there were Tama-chan fan clubs, and there was just a big deal about Tama-chan, and like people would go to see it. And I found a video on YouTube that somebody had filmed of Tama-chan. And then Tama-chan would kind of come and go and disappear, and they would show up in another river. And it kept doing this for quite a while. And then, at one point in Yokohama, it ended up going from Tokyo to Yokohama. And the Nishi ward of Yokohama granted Tama-chan a Juminhyo, which is like, I guess like a residence proof or something like that, like a residence certificate, something like that.
I think so.
And mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, I think everybody in Japan is supposed to have like their Juminhyo, right?
Yeah.
Like you register at the local like municipal office or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the of course, Tama-chan's this big deal and everybody's going crazy for Tama-chan. So Yokohama Nishi ward is excited, and so they like, oh, okay, so he's now in the Nishi ward, so we're going to give him this kind of honorary, although it was legally official. I think they did it like really legit through whatever paperwork they were supposed to do. And so now it had this, proper paperwork residency. But shortly thereafter, I think this was early 2003, foreign residents ended up protesting that because at the time, foreigners were not allowed to have Jumin Hyo, right? They weren't able to register for this like residency, and so it was unfair. Why is a seal getting this Jumin Hyo when we can't get it, right? And for the protest, the foreign protesters like painted whiskers on their face, as a kind of a reference to the bearded seal Tama-chan. Now, this did not result in the foreign residents getting their right to the Jumin Hyo immediately, but in 2012 they did. So, I don't know. Did Tama-chan do that? Maybe. Ryan, did you have to register for that? I guess you did, huh?
Yeah, and you have to get it occasionally for things. Like I think I had to get it when I went for my driver's license. Maybe a little form that proves it.
I remember doing that too in Kobe. You just go to the local office and you fill out whatever paperwork. It's not a big deal.
Which makes me wonder if you just didn't need a form before that, or if it just worked differently.
I'm not sure. I don't know about the details, but from what I read, I guess there was just a different method for foreigners. They didn't have to go through that. But now it's the same, I guess, at least in that respect, to Japanese citizens. So the seal, the seal is still popping up here and there, and it moves around. And then the last sighting is in, I think, April of 2004, and that was in the Arakawa River. So that is back in the Tokyo area. So after that, we don't know what happened to Tama-chan, and maybe it disappeared. It did disappear as far as we know, but maybe it went back to the Arctic, or maybe it unfortunately did not do well in the polluted rivers where it was living for like a year and a half, or maybe there was something else going on, which we will discuss. But so basically after that, Tama-chan's kind of gone, and that's it. The Tama-chan frenzy is over. But there's more to this story. There's this branch of this story that leads down a very, very peculiar path. So we're going to be talking about what some people would discuss, what some people would call a doomsday cult. And I think in the academic literature, they would refer to it as like a new religious movement or a group of some kind, a religious group. We'll just kind of stick to group because, there's people say that cult is a derogatory term, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the story starts in 1977. There was this other religious group called the God Light Association. Have either of you ever heard of this group?
Never.
Today, when we talked about this.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't think I had heard of it. Maybe I...
Yeah, but no, I had not before this.
I mean, I'd probably... Because I read about this. Anyway, the point is, this group was called God Light Association. They had a kanji name. I think it was like God Light, literally Association. But then they changed it to God Light Association, and they just call it GLA. And in 1976, the founder died, and there was a splintering of the group. One of the members, her name was Chino Yuko. I think she was 42 at the time. She ended up going off on her own and starting her own group. So the successor to this GLA was the daughter of the original founder, but she questioned whether she was kind of worthy of that. This Chino Yuko lady, she questioned whether the daughter was worthy to continue the group. And she says that she had this angel visit her, and then she started having these like spiritual like visions or something, and then she tells the GLA people like, look, this angel visited me, and so I should basically be the successor. And then the GLA people said, no, that's not possible, because that angel that you're talking about was somewhere else. So that reminded me of course, Kumamon, the mascot, right? Very, very well known. He's like this bear mascot of Kumamoto. He has appearances all around the country. And I was watching the Japanese news one time, and they were saying, oh, how can he be in so many places at the same time? There must be more than one Kumamon. And it's like, no, there's only one Kumamon. And he can, I think they said he can like teleport or something. Like, so, like,
of course.
it's there's only one, even though he can go all across the country. It's like, no, there's only one. So if you think you saw another one somewhere else, well, no, it's the same one. So, so it was that kind of Kumamon defense. But yeah. So anyway, basically, she starts her own splinter group, and this ends up becoming well, it's called the Chino Shoho, the True Law of Chino, her last name, and it's basically like a mix of kind of like anything goes. Like there's some Buddhism in there, there's some kind of Judeo-Christian stuff in there, there's some New Age stuff in there, there's some alien stuff in there, there's there's a little bit of everything, and that eventually leads to yet, I don't know if it was another splinter or they kind of rebranded, but they ended up creating this group called Pana-Wave Laboratory. That's in English, but in Japanese it's Pana-Wave Kenkyujo, literally Pana-Wave Research Center. And well, they ended up making the news in 2003 in Japan around the same time as Tama-chan. For just, there was a news frenzy all about them. But first of all, Ryan, can you describe like their appearance? I mean, because their appearance was one of the biggest things that caught the attention of people in the Japanese media and across Japan.
They were white.
Yeah. All white. Yes.
All white, literally. So they have surgical masks, like white head wrappings, white. It's hard to tell if it's supposed to be a science like jacket.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lab coat kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, lab coat. I'm like, science jacket. They wear white science jackets. But yeah, some of them look kind of roby, white boots, basically everything head to toe covered in white.
Yeah. I think like sometimes when they have like glasses and stuff, they'll like tape them up with like white tape too.
They drove white cars where they put white paper in all the windows except the front window.
Yeah. Saudi, do you remember seeing this in the news or on TV?
I don't think I've seen them in news. Maybe I just don't remember. But until like, today, basically, I was like, oh, like who are these people? But yeah, I've never seen them in news.
Yeah. No, they look. I mean, they look very. They might look scary, especially at the time. So one of the reasons why this ended up being such a big deal in the media at the time, or again in like 2003, was because this was only like 7-8 years after the Om Shinrikyo like sarin gas attack.
Yeah.
Right. So of course there were many comparisons to that, and there was a lot of concern that this was another like dangerous cult. And of course the authorities, the police, and the government officials, they themselves literally made comparisons. They said things like, it's kind of like Om Shinrikyo, and they were investigating them and following them. But why were they wearing all this white stuff and driving around in white cars? Well, all right. Ryan, can you read what their ideology is? This is as laid out by this guy named Dr. Salvador Jimenez Murguia. He wrote a very interesting article about Pana-Wave Laboratory, which I will link to if you guys want to find out more. But Ryan, could you read that for us?
Sure. So here's the quote. Chairman Chino has been the target of electromagnetic scalar wave attacks by multiple communist factions around the world. That's number one. Number two, the PWL was formed to research and prevent these electromagnetic scalar wave attacks, but as evidenced by the rapid deterioration of Chairman Chino's health, the PWL has gradually failed and must now resort to alternative methods of salvation. And finally, in close conjunction with the previous contention, at this time the PWL is awaiting the arrival of a UFO to conduct an emergency escape from the Earth. Presently, Chino Shoho and the PWL are in the process of preparing for space travel.
Yeah, so PWL is Pana-Wave Laboratory. So, yeah, basically, it seems that, like...
Communist electromagnetic waves.
Yeah, they are being... So, basically, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Soviets were started attacking them, and I guess Japan as a whole, with scalar wave energy or something like that.
But not like the prime minister or anyone, just random religious figures.
No, they actually did make the claim that one prime minister was also attacked.
Oh,
so
well, I mean,
there you go. Yeah. So yeah, they start to wear this like white outfit, this whole white thing, because they say that this protects them from those scalar electromagnetic waves. And then this eventually leads to this 2-week-long event where they are driving around like Honshu, like from Gifu to, I think they end up going even to Tottori in certain parts around there for 2 weeks in this like 20-car caravan, again, white, with like 90-ish cars like of press and police following them. And they're driving around at like 15, 20 kilometers an hour. And
which
they're
is
just
very
kind of
slow.
Yes, it's slow as hell. This whole caravan, according to one reporter who was there, I believe, he wrote an article about this. It was like 300 meters long, right? This caravan. And they're just driving around, and they would like measure, looking for like areas with less scalar waves, with less of these electromagnetic waves, and then which is basically like I guess like really remote areas, like mountain areas. And they would just drive around seemingly aimlessly. And these reporters in their cars were just like, when are they going to stop? Where are they going? And whenever they would reach like a town or a convenience store, they would have to like rush to like buy food and like then get back in the cars and keep following them. And this was being covered, by the media. So people were watching this on TV for like 2 weeks. And then eventually some of the reporters, I guess, heard from the police that they found out that the group was going to Fukui Prefecture. And they eventually arrived there after 2 weeks, and like I think it was like 1,000 kilometers of travel over the course of 2 weeks. And they were just like sleeping in the middle of nowhere, but yeah, they get there to this super remote area in Fukui Prefecture, like on a mountain, and that is where basically the media coverage ended. The major media coverage ended. For Pana-Wave Laboratory. After that, they kind of drop off the mainstream, but there's plenty more to talk about, and we will discuss that. I think let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back.
Can I add 2 things real quick before our break?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
One, for those of you who aren't familiar with like kilometers or the size of Japan, you can reach Fukui from anywhere on Honshu if you're driving at like a normal highway speed, and like literally from the farthest point of Japan in probably under 10 hours. Mm-hmm. So taking 2 weeks means they were going extraordinarily slow.
Yes.
Right.
And additionally, we did learn one thing very valuable from this. If Magneto ever attacks the Earth, all we have to do is wear white clothes and we'll be fine. Because white cloth protects you from electromagnetic waves.
Yes. Oh, one thing also that I should mention is that like they would cover, like you said, they would cover the cars, but they would also cover like trees and I think like just the general area in white sheets to protect themselves.
Yeah, I saw one of the photos is them like moving their equipment and they just have white sheets on top of everything.
Yep. So it was all in white, but yeah. So there's plenty more to discuss with that and why exactly. They were moving around, as well as the link to Tama-chan. So let's take that break. Hey, all right. So I have an announcement related to this episode of the podcast, but just give me a moment to remind you of a few quick things before we get into that. So first of all, don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, and tell a friend about the show. All that stuff helps immensely, especially the subscribing and spreading the word about the show. If you tell a friend or post on Reddit or social media at Japankyo News on Facebook and Twitter, go ahead and tag me. All that stuff will really be a huge help. Every little bit helps immensely, right? So if you can do any of that, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, japankyo.com/Amazon. If you're going to be doing any shopping on Amazon, that is an affiliate link. So a tiny percentage of whatever you purchase is going to come my way so that I can keep doing what I'm doing here, right? japankyo.com/Amazon. All right, so let's get into that announcement. When I was doing the research for this episode, I came across perhaps the most interesting article on Pana-Wave like ever. And that was by an individual by the name of Salvador Jimenez Murguia. Now, this article details a whole lot of information that I couldn't find anywhere else. And this is in part because Dr. Muguya, he actually got to contact them and was in touch with them and was communicating with members of Pana-Wave, and he got to go to Japan and meet them in person, go to their facility. And so after I read this article, I thought I have to talk to Dr. Muguya, and I got to track him down, and he agreed to do an interview. And so I'm going to be releasing that interview over on Japan Station, the other podcast that I do. And there's plenty of stuff there that I don't cover in this episode of Ichimon Japan about Pana-Wave and Tama-chan, right? There's a lot of stuff that we don't go into here that we talk about over there in episode 69 of Japan Station. Now, that episode is not out yet as of the time of the release of this episode. It's going to be coming out July 1st. So if you want to find out more, if you're curious about that, and I think you should be, go ahead and hit that subscribe button over for Japan Station if you haven't yet. All right. Again, subscribe. It's a huge help. You won't be missing any future episodes over there. All right. So Japan Station episode 69. And by the way, episode 68 just came out. That one is about Keirin, which is a form of Japanese competitive cycling. But there's a whole lot more to it than just it's a sport. Bicycles, blah, blah, blah. There's gambling and strict rules for the cyclists. It's a really interesting world. And that episode is with Justin McCurry, who is a journalist based in Japan. He just released a new book about Keirin. It's called The War on Wheels. All right. Great book. I read it. I really enjoyed it. So that's episode 68. It's out now. You can find it at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. So as I was saying earlier, this group was very, it seems like, again, I wasn't there. I wasn't watching TV at the time, but everything that I read about this really seemed like it was bringing back memories of the Om Shinrikyo sarin gas attack, which I think was in 1995, right?
Yeah, 95.
Okay. So Saudi, I mean, you were, you were born and raised in Japan, and you were there at the time for both of these incidents. But, I mean, Om Shinrikyo was a huge thing at the time, right?
Yeah. And I guess, I was probably in the fourth grade or fifth grade. And I just remember watching them on the news and just thinking like, oh my God, how terrible this is. Yeah. But yeah, so by association, I guess any kind of group, I think a lot of people, including myself, might approach it with a negative lens because of this specific incident. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there were a few little incidents here or there, but Pana-Wave never did any sort of terrorist attack like Om Shinrikyo did. They, for the most part, just kind of isolated themselves. And like I said, there were a few little, run-ins with the law here or there. But outside of that, the Pana-Wave didn't commit any sort of like big sort of terrorist attack like Om Shinrikyo. But nevertheless, to see this very peculiar group, driving around in these cars and saying things about the end of the world and this and that, like, it's very concerning. So,
yeah.
Their leader, which I mentioned earlier, Chino Yuko, was in one of these cars, and I think they dubbed that car Arcadia. They had her there, and they claimed that she was being attacked by the scalar waves or whatever, and that she was suffering from cancer or something like that, but that was never confirmed. And so that's why they were looking for this more remote area. And so they ended up finding it in Fukui Prefecture. Now, Chino Yuko had also made this prophecy that the world was going to end on May 15th, 2003, because a 10th planet called Nibiru was approaching Earth, and it was going to mess with the polar the poles, the magnetic poles of the Earth, and lead to catastrophe.
Like seals getting lost.
Like seals getting lost. We will get back to the seals. But thankfully, a fleet of UFOs made a force field for the Earth to protect it. So it was all okay in the end.
Did the aliens look seal-like in appearance by any chance?
You know what? I haven't seen any descriptions, unfortunately. So it's not impossible that was the case. Yeah. Saudi, did you know about the UFOs, how they saved us?
No, not at all.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, it was in the news everywhere here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you know now, so you can be thankful. So that's not the last prophecy, though. There was another prophecy that would happen a little while after that one. And of course that didn't end up happening. And there was another claim by Chino Yuko that the UFO fleet had crash landed or something because they due to a lack of food and fuel. And so eventually she declares that they have to build their own UFO. And this is all in this article that I mentioned by Salvador Jimenez Murguia, and it's a really, really interesting article. Like this guy, he actually went to their facility and he was communicating with them, and he was like doing research on them, and it was really, really interesting. She writes, yeah.
Do we know if any of them actually had like a scientific or engineering background, or was this just like a shoe salesman who wanted to decide, like, yeah, I'm going to help build a UFO?
I have not seen any mention whatsoever of a scientific background of any of the members, which I have seen estimates of like 60 to 100 people. That's actually different from the Om Shinrikyo, which did have like some highly educated people, at least a couple, right?
Yeah, scientists and engineers and people who study. Yeah, that was the thing, like all these like people who have respected, I guess, jobs, and they had good income, and yeah. I mean, that was another like shocking aspect of it. Right. So-called like elites were the members.
Right. Yeah. But for this, for Pana-Wave, I haven't heard any descriptions of who exactly these people were. The only kind of related thing that I saw was that the first group that she recruited for the original group in 1977, which was when she first started it after she splintered off from GLA. So this lady, Chino Yuko, she could speak English apparently. And so she recruited her English students, it seems. So apparently the first group were like English students or whatever. So, poor students, they got roped into this. But you know what? Like, and also,
the grade probably depended on it.
You want to pass? You gotta
help us build the UFO.
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't so bad. Another thing is like they had 20 cars. They had facilities. They had access to facilities. They were at least paying rent in some of them, or maybe even bought some outright. I don't know. But where is this money coming from? Well, it's almost certainly coming from the members, right?
It's got right. Yeah.
It's pretty much always how these kind of groups go, right? Where it's like, oh, if you really care about what we're doing, then give me everything you own. And then, then you can't get out of it. So they obviously had some funds. Another interesting thing that they would do is they published a so-called like scientific peer-reviewed journal. And it was like photos of UFOs and like ectoplasm and like poetry and declarations from Chino Yuko.
I love the idea that they have like scientific journals and like the next article is just some poems.
Yeah, that's so
Were
cute.
the poems also peer-reviewed?
I hope so.
There's like citations.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like...
And I'm guessing peer-reviewed means they asked their other members to review it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is a good picture of a UFO. I like this one.
Now to write a poem. Oh, UFO up in the sky.
So, look, what I'm describing here, it is ridiculous and absurd, but I think something that should be pointed out is that sadly, the people that fall for this, the people that believe this, are the ones that get taken advantage of.
I'm making more fun of the concept of it, not the people and victims.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's okay to laugh at the things that are being described while still, having sympathy for the people that fell for,
Right.
this thing,
Yeah.
because obviously none of us here believe what happened, what Chino-yuka was claiming. So if you do, then I'm sorry, I guess, but yeah. So where was I? We were talking about
I think they
UFO
should have wore
pictures.
red. That was the problem. White is still
Red?
vulnerable to electromagnetic waves, but red is fine.
Red is fine. Okay. Well, I guess there you go. We got to start our own thing where we all wear red.
And it's not seals that are important, it's sea lions. People confuse the two. That's the other issue.
There you go. All right. Sea lions and we all wear red. All right. So there was another prophecy, but that didn't happen. And the UFOs fell. And then Chino-yuko contacted this guy, Murguia, faxed him. Even though they're very opposed to telephone poles and electricity and all that, they did use faxes. So there you go.
Wait. How are they going to make a UFO without technology?
Well, hang on. So in the communication, in this fax that that Chino-yuko sent to Murguia, she says that they're going to use some sort of steel titanium alloy, and that some doctor, they don't say what kind of doctor, was there, and that she was asking if he could cooperate with them as well. So also they were going to go to planet A, just the letter A, planet A.
Okay.
Which, to me, it just seems like after all the effort that goes into all this story, everything that this really incredible thing where, the UFOs are waiting for them and this and that, and the electromagnetic waves and the poles are going to switch and all this, the best we got was planet A. Come on, right? They couldn't have come up with a better name.
Well, it's probably in some alien dialect that the humans couldn't pronounce. They're we'll just call it A.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Okay, that explains it. Yeah, she was translating it for us, so we could remember it. Yeah, it's not like blah 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 blah.
Yeah, that would be very hard to say.
Yeah,
and hard to find on a map.
Yes. So they I don't know how far along they get into the process of actually constructing the UFO. Another factor that it seems to motivate them to leave the planet is that there's this Project Lucifer that, according to her, the U.S. government basically shot a probe with nuclear weapons, 25 kilos of plutonium into Jupiter in order to turn it into a sun. And of course, that would turn Mars into an asteroid field, and that would destroy most of the Earth. And so they had to leave. But they didn't just have to leave. They had to take animals and things that were not too affected by gravity, such as space food, with them. And so they would take birds and their pets and animals, basically like a spaceship Noah's Ark, and then go to planet A to reconstruct Earth. So
I'm speechless.
In this theory, the U.S. was just flat out trying to destroy the Earth.
Yeah, and I don't know why the U.S. was trying to destroy Jupiter in order to in order to turn it into a sun, in order to destroy the Earth.
They realized the U.S. is also on the Earth, right?
Yeah, I didn't get that part. But this is the stuff that didn't make it into the Japanese media. This is the stuff that this Murguia guy found because he was researching them and actually communicated with them after the Japanese media stopped communicating and covering them. I didn't find mention of this stuff in Japanese. It was only in English. So
that's amazing that they agreed to speak to this Murguia person.
He went there and he was shooting video and interviewing them and asking them questions do you think this is a religion? And then one guy was telling him no, I don't think this is really a religion, although there's kind of some religious aspects to it, but we don't worship, but it's kind of like a religion, but it's also science. And so obviously there isn't much logic to all of this, and you find that in the declarations and the statements of the members, but it's really interesting how they kind of try to justify this all in their head.
The science breaks down immediately. They thought birds were just less affected by gravity.
I'm not sure. Yeah, the space food was less affected by gravity. I'm not sure if the animals were less affected by gravity.
It's I don't think they fly simply because gravity just ignores them.
Yeah, I'm not clear on that part, but again, the article is in the link, so if anybody wants to read it in detail, you can get all the nuance. But
I'm really curious what kind of UFO they were trying to make, because it seems like they were serious, so they have to be aware they don't have space technology.
Yeah, well, so towards the end of the article, Murguia says that he went to visit them again, and I think this was in 2005, in July of 2005, if I remember correctly. And he was walking around the facility talking to one guy, and he was like shooting video and stuff. But he says that he didn't. The progress that he saw was a 2-acre landing area. Like, I guess they had cleared out a part of the land so that the spaceship could land.
But I thought they were going to make their own spaceship. I guess they wanted the landing
zone first. But then they were
also
saying, then they were also saying that there was, like, the fleet was also going to come for them. So, like, even within what they're saying, they kind of, like, would flip-flop.
We need to interview one of these people, because apparently they were in communication with aliens, but also opposed all kind of communication methods. Yeah. So, yeah, at one time they were saying that the spaceships were going to come for them, but then they were also saying that they were going to build their own spaceship. So, yeah, again, I don't know. Like, really, to me, honestly, it seems like, to me, Chino Yuko had some mental issues. And unfortunately, she was able to, that ended up, I guess she was very persuasive and built a following. Either that or this was like, let me see the next thing that I can come up with so that I can string these people along so that they can keep believing me. And that's always what happens, right? When somebody predicts like Doomsday is coming on whatever day and it doesn't happen, then they have to come up with some other prediction. And then that one doesn't happen. Then they come up with some other prediction, right? And that's just how it goes. Another interesting thing that Murguia saw was they would act like, oh, no. So he was walking around with the camera shooting the video, and then the member that was with him said, oh, stop. You're about to walk into one of these electromagnetic attacks. Right? So, is it always there, or did they see it coming?
I guess they can see it, but normal people can't.
I wonder if they made him wear white to interview them.
Oh, that's a good question. I really want to talk to this guy. I'm going to see if I can track him down. But yeah, and then he also described how they would act out scalar energy attacks. Like, I guess they would play like they were being attacked and they would fall to the floor or something. I don't know what exactly that meant. That was kind of a vague part in the article, but yeah.
As like a rehearsal?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Like, oh no, I'm being attacked. Like, and then they would.
Is it like a fire drill, or is it just like.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So prepared.
Yeah, no, they are serious. I mean, obviously they believed it. This went on for, well, actually, in a way, since 1977 until 2000 something. So, yeah. I don't know when the alien part entered into this whole equation. I don't know if that was there from the very beginning.
It always goes to aliens.
So, Chino Yuko ends up dying in 2006. Let's check. So, yeah, at age 72, she passes away in 2006. And then I don't know if Murguia was in touch with them after that. He did publish one more article, but specifically about Yuko Chino. I was not able to get access to that article, so I'm not sure what he uncovers in that one. And that one was published a few years after she died, I think. But anyway, in 2011, Fukui Shimbun, Fukui newspaper, ran an article in which they go to the Fukui facility and they find one of the buildings, I guess, that they were using, and it had been turned back into just a regular like minka, basically like a farmhouse. There was somebody in there, or at least a few people in there. I don't know how many people. And they talked to them and said, yeah, they're not around anymore. The Pana-Wave people aren't around anymore. So I've read in a couple places, it just seems like the group naturally died out. I guess the people just went their own ways and they just went back to normal, I guess.
I still think their UFO worked and they flew away. Or
that. Or the rescue came.
and they got Tama-chan on their way, and that's why we haven't seen him since 2006.
So, yes. All right, so let's go back to Tama-chan, all right? So, in 2003, again, this is when Tama-chan is swimming around in the polluted rivers of Tokyo and Yokohama.
Just being
in
a
the
happy
first
seal.
quarter, just being a happy, confused seal. That's like, why are all these people like taking pictures of me and throwing food at me?
You probably didn't mind the food.
Probably. But okay, so speaking of the food, so in the first quarter of 2003, there's this group that this publication called Shukan Bunshun uncovers, and basically they end up being associated with Pana-Wave Laboratory. But what Pana-Wave declares is that they had been feeding Tama-chan for a few months, and at one point they tried to capture it in order to release it back into nature, because if they didn't, then the I guess the poles would keep reversing, and that would also lead to like the end of the world and people dying.
So wait, Tama-chan was behind it all.
Maybe. so they actually had constructed pools to keep Tama-chan, and apparently the pools were in a place that they were renting in Yamanashi Prefecture. And after this news broke, then the owner of the place where they were at in Yamanashi Prefecture basically told them to like leave, and they wanted his money back for the rent and like cancel their contract. So they had to like take down the pools. And obviously they failed. They didn't capture Tama-chan. And the media, of course, picked up on this story too. And I think this is really the first time that Pana-Wave rose to prominence in the Japanese media. And then after that was, it was a couple of months after that, during like around Golden Week, so around April, May, when that big caravan happened and they moved to Fukui Prefecture. They didn't capture Tama-chan. Tama-chan got away and just swum around Tokyo for another, I don't know, like year or so. But yeah, apparently they thought that Tama-chan was proof that the polar magnetic poles or whatever were going haywire, and thus Tama-chan was confused and ended up in Tokyo rather than in its natural habitat. So that's the connection to Tama-chan.
And Tama-chan was like the only confused one who ended up there. Like
he was extra sensitive
all the others.
Yeah, Tama-chan was extra sensitive, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, he was
special.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, well, see, Tama-chan helped foreigners get, their Juminhyo, their residence.
That's right.
Yeah, this was a prodigy.
So,
he helped them do it 8 years later.
Yeah. Well, Tama-chan knew. Tama-chan was from the future, right? So I'm just, look.
He knew bureaucracy was slow, so it would take some time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tama-chan traveled back in time from 2012 because he knew that if he didn't, then foreigners would never get their Juminhyo. Okay.
Right.
And he was a foreigner. He was not from Japan.
Yeah, so he sympathized with foreigners, so he had to go back in time.
How nice. Yeah.
And then, then after he disappeared, he just had to go back to 2012. And then he went back to the Arctic because, that's where he's from. So there you go. But actually, there were other seals that ended up lost in Japan. I think there were at least two more. There was one in 2011, I think, and that seal got nicknamed Ara-chan, I think, because they spotted it in the Arakawa River.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, in that respect, I guess Tama-chan was not unique, but there were, I think, at least two more.
That one didn't do any like
no, it didn't do any like social reform.
No social reform.
No social reform. Yeah,
just a lazy, good for nothing seal, not like Tama-chan.
It was a normie, totally, not smart seal. Yes.
Yeah, Tama-chan fought for rights. Ara-chan just fought for fish.
Oh goodness! Oh my gosh!
Sell out Ara-chan.
Oh gosh! Anything else that we forgot or at least I forgot here, guys? Saudi, anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Right. Anything else?
I feel like similar to how when we did the school rules things, then like a couple months later, that made news that they were changing them. Now that we've made this episode in like 2 months, Tama-chan is going to reappear.
Oh,
with space aliens.
That would be amazing. I would love to see Tama-chan again.
is Tama-chan still alive?
Alive.
All
Right.
Seriously, we're not talking about traveling back in time and aliens and all this stuff. Seriously, is Tama-chan still alive? So, I don't know how old Tama-chan was, and I didn't see any report estimating an age for Tama-chan back in 2003. But I did just look up what is the lifespan of a bearded Arctic seal, something like that, and I saw 25 to 30 years. So,
Oh, wow.
it's still possible
Possible,
that
yeah.
Tama-chan is alive somewhere out there.
Please be alive somewhere.
Come back. You can have a real Juminho now.
Come see us again.
Come back, Tama-chan. Exactly. So maybe somewhere out there, Tama-chan is just, having a good time, eating fish, and laughing at the craziness that Japan went through in 2003 just because one seal got lost and ended up in a river. So, I think that was the last big thing. So maybe Tama-chan is still out there. And if not, well, it may only be a matter of time before another seal, for whatever reason, ends up getting lost and ends up in Tokyo, or who knows, maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, if we don't see Tama-chan's successor is probably going to show up
Exactly.
for us. Yeah. With another
To save the world again.
social reform.
Yeah, more social reform.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's too much immigration discrimination. We must help the seals must help the foolish humans who cannot live together.
Or it could be a new unrelated issue, like the having different last names in the same family thing.
Wow, man, these seals are really informed on
seals
social
are the
issues in
social
Japan.
justice warriors of nature.
Exactly. Yeah, all they ask for is a few fish now and then, and they'll help you.
They will help your cause.
Yeah, they'll turn your country into a utopia. Yep. All right. Well, I think that's it. Again, there will be plenty of links in the show notes. There's tons of English language articles about the craziness that was going on in 2003 regarding both Tama-chan and Pana-Wave. So I did find stuff in the New York Times and the Guardian. So I will include links to those if you guys want to read even more and more detailed stuff. But that's it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening to me talking about this very interesting group. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.